Today I'm reviewing a Barcelona home that's part historic townhouse and part modern greenhouse oasis. It's pretty central in Barcelona, and the architects have taken a unique approach by turning the property's backyard into the beating heart of the home. I'm going to break down everything you need to know about this property because I'm here to make sure that when you buy, sell, or remodel your own home, you make the decisions that make you the most money. The link is in the description for that, but for now, let's take a look inside this home. So the first thing you need to know about this home is that it's built around this central courtyard, and this was never an afterthought of the architectural experience here. They really isolated this as the center of the home, even though it used to be the backyard, and built everything purposefully around it. Now, they don't really have any stuff out here, just the terracotta tile floors, this orange stucco wall, and above that, a brick wall that has these climbing vines all over it. But when it comes to decor or furniture items, there's nothing out here at all, aside from a little bit of shrubbery along the left wall here. Now, these textured walls and the terracotta floors do work nicely together, so everything does look and feel cohesive. Now, as you'll see as we move throughout this home, this is the most important space in the entire home, but the problem is there's nothing grand about it. Right now it's completely empty, and so it can be used for everything, but also for nothing, and I get the feeling that the way it's set up now, it's kind of being used for nothing. And one thing they can do that would really spruce up the place with very little effort is to put a tree in here. It can be in the center of the courtyard here or along the left side, but something that's endemic to Spain, so it fits in with the culture, with the environment, but also a little bit more creative and unique, so it's not the tree that you see all along the streets or, at everyone's home. Just something that has a little bit of spice to it. Put that in here and it's going to make the space feel a lot more interesting. Now, when it comes to scale, this is a pretty large courtyard when it comes to an inner city Barcelona apartment. And one thing that makes it look bigger right now is that they haven't put any furniture in here that might make it look small or cramped, but it also just feels empty. So you've always got to find that balance between making a space feel large and making a space actually usable and functional. And right now it feels large, but it's not that usable or functional the way it's currently set up. And so what you want to do is provide some specific functionality to the courtyard using specific pieces of furniture. So maybe you get a barbecue and set up a little grilling station out there. Maybe you get some low cushions that people can arrange in a circle and sit on the floor like that. Whatever the case may be, you need some kind of furniture out here so that people know how to use the space, both for the homeowners themselves, but also for any guests who might come over. Now, when it comes to longevity, they've definitely used durable materials here, specifically on the floor and the walls, so I don't anticipate that being a problem for quite a number of years. And they've also got an amazing amount of natural light, and it's a really calm, hopefully quiet space in here. Now, at the same time, because it is open air and exposed to the elements, it might be pretty hot in the summer, and it could be pretty cool in the winter as well. But my main concern here is actually privacy, because this home has both the ground floor, which we're going to look at here, and also the first floor of this building, which we don't have any photos of, so we won't be able to see. But there are multiple other levels above that, and so anyone who's living in those upper levels will be very clearly and easily able to look down into the courtyard and see what's ever going on down there. So one of the first things I'd be doing if this were my space would be installing some fabric above the courtyard to give you some shade from the sun and also from prying eyes, or at the very least, getting a large umbrella so that at least part of this space is shaded and private. But one thing I'm really happy about here in the courtyard is that they've used local materials and they've honored the existing structure of this building, so it looks very authentically Spanish and Mediterranean because it is. Okay, so now let's step into the living room, which is placed directly next to the courtyard to maximize the amount of natural light coming in and to give the space that indoor-outdoor experience. And overall, I really like what's going on in here. Nothing is overwhelming, and the furniture all makes sense. The cream walls and ceiling in here match the concrete floors, and the furniture is pretty much all in light colors, so it's a light palette all the way around, and nothing is screaming for your attention. Now, with that said, this big, beautiful bookshelf and the low storage unit on this wall here is definitely the focal point of the room, and honestly, it looks great. I love that they've mixed in some different colors on the bookshelf and also given a little bit of break here and there so that it looks a little bit more styled rather than just having hundreds of books all up in a row there. And then the artwork on the cabinet below is pretty minimal, but also just gives the space a little bit more personality. The ceilings in here are a decent height. I would guess somewhere around 3 meters or 9.5, 10 feet, something like that. And so there's a nice volume of space in this room, and the furniture sits pretty comfortably. And the bones of the room are pretty strong. They do have a lot of natural light coming in, which is aided by the fact that they're using concrete floors, which reflects the light up to the ceiling and bounces it around the room. And overall, because of the natural light and the airiness of the room, it feels pretty cozy. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that these two arches that sit between the living room and the courtyard, this is actually where the old house ends, and everything beyond there has been built by these architects. And so I just love that they've maintained the original architecture of the home. And this style of using arched doorways is very typical Mediterranean, and you'll see it stretching back hundreds of years. Now, right next to the living room is the dining room, and we've got this bench on the far wall here that frames the room and very distinctly defines where the dining table will sit. And the dining space is very minimally styled, but it still looks nice. Though in my opinion, they could use one large piece of art on the wall here behind the dining table. But at least they're using the same palette as the living room with the concrete floors and the white and wood furniture. It looks pretty good in my opinion, though if they're not going to put that piece of art on the wall, then another thing they could do to just spruce up this room a little bit more would be to put a large rug underneath the dining table and chairs here. Just going to give it a little bit more warmth underfoot. Instead of constantly walking on concrete, you define a space for the dining zone, and it feels a little bit more homey that way. Now, in this space, there's no internal focal point, but instead, the courtyard itself is the focal point. So when you're sitting here at the table, then you're getting all the natural light coming in, and you get to take a look outside, hopefully see some of the green space that they'll bring in, and have that indoor-outdoor experience. Now, the bench is pretty large, and the dining table will seat 6 people, but they are missing 2 more chairs if they want to be able to seat 6 there, because right now it's only suited for 4. And also, I'm certain they could go with a higher quality dining chair here, because I've actually had this exact same Eames model, and they do start to get a little loose over time. You need to kind of tighten the screws a little bit, even after just sitting on them for a couple months. And they're honestly not that comfortable to sit on. You know, they're molded plastic, and if you're going to be dining for a couple of hours, maybe having some friends over for a dinner party, you want to give them a better experience than what this chair is going to offer. But speaking of dinner parties, let's talk about the kitchen, because like I said a moment ago, the kitchen is actually part of an entirely new extension built onto the home that stretches back into the backyard and separates itself between this newly built kitchen and the courtyard that we talked about earlier. And so the kitchen has been specifically designed to sit next to the courtyard and get tons of natural light, but I think they made a couple mistakes here. Number one, because the kitchen is so long and narrow, you only have this one stretch of counter space where you can actually prep meals, and on the other side, you just have the doors leading out to the courtyard. They do have this narrow shelf here, but it's higher than the other counters, so it'll be awkward to work on, and with the radiator underneath it, I don't think you can even comfortably sit stools there if you want to sit there and have a coffee or have your breakfast in the morning. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but as it is set up now, I don't think this is very functional. And because you can't take food from here and move it back here like we would in most kitchens, right? Where you have counters on either side of you and you can move food back and forth. What it means is you're going to be walking from one end of the kitchen to the other, back and forth, and have to do a lot of walking in here, which really isn't ideal, especially if they like to cook a lot at home. Now, I'm glad that they don't have any excess decor in here, and the kitchen cabinets and finishes do look good, and they've continued to use the concrete floors and a lot of wood touches to ensure that the kitchen fits in perfectly with the rest of the home. Now, just like it was in the living room and the dining room, the courtyard is still the focal point here in the kitchen, but there's a problem. Because right now you can see that there are door frames between each of these individual doors. And so even if you open up all the doors, you never get this big expansiveness of a wide open space where you can move between the kitchen and the courtyard, which means that you still have to walk through an individual doorway. So if you're carrying something like a big paella, it might actually be difficult to get outside depending on how big that pot is. And you can see the problem more specifically here when you look at this image that shows the doors open, but the shelf still sitting there and the radiator below. So you can't even walk out through those doors, which I think is a huge miss. Ideally, what you want is to be able to open some accordion doors so that you've got a completely open space of 10, 12, 15, even 20 feet, which is just open to the elements, and you can walk in and out and have the seamless indoor-outdoor experience that we've been looking for here. But there are a couple other problems here as well. Number one, glass roofs like this get dirty really easily. You're gonna have bird poop, other debris, and just all kinds of stuff on there, and you're going to need to clean it pretty regularly if you want to be able to look up and have a view of the sky that isn't peppered with all this other stuff. And then amplifying that problem even further is this ficus tree here, which I absolutely love, and I think it's a great choice to have it here, but you just need to recognize that you might have sap coming off the tree and sticking on your roof. You might have animal droppings dropping down on your roof that you need to look through when you look up, right? These are just the realities of having a glass roof. And so if you're going to move into a place like this, or you're going to design a place like this, keep that in mind. It's not going to look like a clean windshield every time you look up. A lot of the time it's going to look a lot worse. Plus, you've also got to recognize that this will work pretty well as a summer kitchen, even if they don't have that expansiveness that I'm looking for, but it won't necessarily work as an all-season kitchen. It might get pretty cold in here in the winter if these doors don't seal extremely well, and I'm guessing that they don't. So keep that in mind if you're buying a place that's promising this indoor-outdoor vibe. It's not always as low maintenance as you might think. Now, there's one more small space on this level that I overlooked so far, which is the study. And this sits directly next to the courtyard, in between the living room and the courtyard, and it gets the most natural light of anywhere in this home other than the kitchen, but it's really not the best place for focus. Because if you've got people outside, eating, drinking, hanging out, this is not the place where you want to be doing work, right? It's going to be distracting, and your mind is going to wander when people are doing things out there, or even if you just have cats jumping over the walls and coming in, it's going to be distracting for you. Also, it's really small here, and I wouldn't really consider this a real workspace. Again, the chair here is not comfortable enough for long work sessions, and it's just not an inspiring spot where you want to get deep work done. And personally, I think over time, the homeowners are going to realize that this is not the right place for a workstation, and they're going to move it to another part of the home and replace it with a bar. And this would be such a better setup in here, with the kitchen on one side of the courtyard, the bar on this side, and you can just move from place to place, grab food, grab drinks, spend time in the courtyard, right? Hanging out with family and friends. That, I think, is what this place is all about. It's in the center of Barcelona. You want to be entertaining. It's the perfect place for that, but having a workstation here is just wasted space, and it's not the right setup. You don't want to inject work culture into a beautiful courtyard like this. It just feels wrong. It goes against, everything that Spain stands for. And I'm pretty sure that over time, they're going to realize that and change up this space for something that's more social and fits better with the courtyard setup. Now, we don't actually have any images of the second level of this home, which is where the bedrooms are, but because it's such a unique home just on the ground floor alone, I still wanted to share it with you. So now let's take a moment to think about what we can learn from this place. First, sometimes you've got such a special feature in your property that you immediately know it's the hero space. And in this case, that's obviously the courtyard. And so if you have the same thing, lean into that and don't be afraid to make that special space the focal point of your entire home. Just keep in mind that this works well with natural elements like an interior courtyard or a particularly special view, but it works less well without them. Second, bold ideas only work when you show restraint everywhere else. And so the greenhouse kitchen, the preserved arches, and the indoor-outdoor living setup could have easily felt gimmicky, but they don't here because the material palette is limited, the furniture is quiet, and nothing is over-designed. Third, built-ins are powerful, but they also come with a cost. The banquette at the dining table and the shelving and the floating cabinets in the living room, they give this home structure, but they also permanently lock in how those two rooms function. And so what you gain in clarity, you lose in flexibility. And fourth, comfort is lifestyle specific. This home is incredibly comfortable if you value light, openness, and a connection to nature, but it's much less comfortable if you want privacy or perfectly regulated temperatures. So just make sure you think deeply about what you specifically need anytime you're buying a home of your own. So I'm dissecting a ton of homes like this one, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. If you want to take what you've learned here to the next level, the link is in the description. And if you want to see another Spanish home that uses a lot more color than this one, but still looks classy and well put together, check out this video up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.